Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to this message of hope. We're very excited today to have former Police Chief Devon Clunis with us, and thank you again for coming. I'm Laura Reimer. I'm the Director of Program Development here in the Faculty of Law. I'm also losing my reading eyesight, so got to wear the goggles for a while. We're delighted to, as I said, introduce today's guest. I'd also like to acknowledge former Chief of Winnipeg Police Danny Smythe and Inspector Gord, I forgot your last name. Friesen. Welcome here. Thank you for being here. Before we start, I'll read the university's territory acknowledgement. We do this as a reflection and expression of gratitude that recognizes the land that we occupy as a community, and while we promote a shared commitment to understanding historical events that have led us to the present day. So the University of Manitoba campuses and research spaces are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Ininiwuk, Anishinaabeg, and Dakota, Oyate, Dene, and Inuit, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I first met Devon Clunis at the University of Winnipeg when he came to speak to my class on what turned out to be the last day before he resigned as Chief of Police from Winnipeg. During his tenure as chief, he embraced the challenge of transforming our city, known for its high crime rates and gang affiliations at the time, into a safer and more inclusive community. Devon Clunis spearheaded internal initiatives aimed at redefining the roles of police officers, reconstructing their purpose, and reinventing systems with a focus on compassion, humility, and values. Through the compassionate and community-based leadership style, Chief Clunis achieved remarkable outcomes that were recognized as nothing short of a miracle by Maclean's magazine in 2016. The police cars with a culture of safety for all on their rear bumpers are reminders of your years with us. So he's expanded his reach, though, well beyond Winnipeg, and he's going to tell you about that. He's now an international business consultant. He's guided by a people-first leadership philosophy. He focuses on how legal systems and organizations can respond more effectively to the lived realities of the communities they serve. His work highlights the human dimensions of law, fairness, legitimacy, and inclusion, especially during periods of social change like we're in, and highlighted public scrutiny. So welcome here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. It really is my thrill to be here with you. Typically, this time of year, I'm somewhere south, much warmer. So though I'm thrilled to be with you, I can't say I'm thrilled about the weather or anything like that. But I truly am here because of you, because tomorrow afternoon, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going south. And, when we were trying to arrange this, I asked Laura, is there any opportunity for me to move it earlier? There wasn't. So I really mean it when I say I am here for you, because I really want to have a conversation. This is not even a presentation. I really want to have a conversation. It is more of a dialogue. And I'm looking so forward to it. And then I discovered that my colleagues, former Chief of Police, Inspector, and John also is a colleague, former colleague of mine, was going to be here. So I'm super excited, Chief, to be here, to be able to share this information with both of you and with my good friend, Gord. And I entitled it, did we skip ahead one? Realizing Hope. Realizing hope. Hope is this powerful word, but if it's only just something that we're always hoping for and we don't actually grasp it, at some point in time, I think people are going to lose hope. And so that's really what I want you to get out of this more than anything else, is at the end of it, I hope you're going to leave here feeling quite hopeful about what we can accomplish, what we can achieve in the future. But I want to point out that what I have to say might cause some discomfort. Because I said, I am staying in Winnipeg, January 21st, we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to maybe step into some things that might be a little bit uncomfortable for some of you. I want you also to be aware that you might find yourself maybe shifting perspective on some issues. Because I think we're at a place where truly we need to have a bit of a shift if we're going to get to a better destination for all of us. And don't be alarmed if Devon Clunis might confirm some things that you've been thinking about, but possibly afraid to acknowledge or even say out loud in our current culture. So if any of that happens, I want to tell you this, do this. I say, if anything I say makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, realize I'm not here to make you uncomfortable. But if something is starting to shift, rather than just reacting from the intellect, I say do this. Just let it kind of rest for a little bit. You know, let it get down to your heart and think there. Just let the heart, because most times I feel that the heart is right. And right now I think we don't have a lot of, heart in the things that are taking place in society. That's what I want us to understand there. And also, over the last, I would say maybe 3 years or so, I speak across this entire nation, and I've been asking audiences these two questions, and I want to hear what your responses are to them. The first one is, how many of you are satisfied with the state of the world? I've posed these questions to well over 20,000 people. How many yeses do you think I've received so far? Over 20,000, how many people are satisfied with the state of our world currently? 4. 4 out of 20,000. So clearly, not very hopeful. Okay, how many of you are hopeful or optimistic that things will change for the better in this audience? See, 1, 2, okay. Be cool if we could find out what's going on online. Typically, maybe 5% of us are optimistic that things are going to get better in our world. So imagine that. We're living in a state where the vast majority of us say very clearly, almost 100% are saying we're not satisfied with the state of the world, but only maybe 5% of us are optimistic. What's our responsibility? And this is how I like to say it. Those of us who raised our hands, and there's nothing wrong if you did not raise your hand, I totally get it. But if you have a little bit of optimism, then we have a responsibility to help spread that, share that with everybody else, because imagine what the state of our world will be. So currently I say we're living in this, a strong deficit of hope. And it really is. On Monday, I was speaking to future educators at the UW with the same result. Doesn't matter where I speak. And I've even did this exercise with some Americans. And we're not going to get political, but the response was the same. People are not optimistic. And I'm saying we have a responsibility. What are we going to do? But before we can do anything, we really need to have those real, strong, meaningful discussions, meaningful dialogue. So let me tell you just a little bit about Devon Clunis and why I think the way I do, why I feel the way I do, and why I'm here with you sharing this particular message. So, that little boy was me. It is the only photo of Devon Clunis in existence as a child. I grew up in Jamaica, in rural Jamaica, in a little place called Harmony Vale, really with no electricity, no running water. I walked to school every day. But the beauty of Harmony Vale, and when I tell you that, you might say, well, that little boy might have been poor, but I never felt poor. Everyone in the community knew everyone. Everyone shared my shade of beautiful, I like to say. I don't go with just the black, white, no, we're all beautiful, let's start there. So I knew everyone in the community. I was being raised by my grandparents, and at age 11, my mother had left me with my grandparents, first went to Kingston, then immigrated to Canada, just to eke out a better life for us, because yes, where I was growing up, there was a lot of poverty. So I didn't really know my mother. The only way I knew my mom was my grandparents had a photo of her, and every now and then they would take me to the photo and said, that's your mom, she sends money to take care of you. So at age 11, my younger sister and I got on a plane, and we came to Canada, north end of Winnipeg, to live with my mom. In this house, we had electricity, we had running water. So you would think things should be better for that child. But imagine, you've been plucked away from everything you know, you're deposited into a foreign environment, and even though this woman is my mom, I really didn't know her. Do you think that's an easy transition for any one of us? I mean, even an adult immigrated and coming to, this foreign land, I think would have a challenge. For me, it was very challenging, but I didn't realize till the end of my first school year when the teachers told me that I had failed grade 6. And I was sitting with 2 female teachers who did not share my shade of beautiful, and my mother, and they advised us that I had failed, and the one teacher says this. She said, he's just not a very smart little boy. Let's put him in a class for slow learners. Now today, people will be very quick to say, what a racist teacher. And I say, not so quick. 1975, 1976, in our city, there were not a lot of kids with my shade of beautiful. This poor teacher has never had to deal with a child like me, so how about we just a little bit of grace and say, I'm going through a transition, and yes, I'm the child and she's the adult, but she's also going through a transition. So I wouldn't say, let's not just label her as a racist because she said those words. And I had two options. The first was, we'll move you ahead into grade 7 in a class for slow learners. Just didn't sound right to me. Or you would repeat grade 6. And I remember thinking, I'm now age 12, I don't want to repeat grade 6, I'm going to feel dumb. But something in my head said, Devon, that's the right decision for your future. When I tell this story, I tell people very clearly, I am not preaching at you, but I always say, I think that was my first real God moment, because what 12-year-old boy would be thinking so clearly to say the decision you're about to make will impact your entire future? But my saving grace was the second teacher, who also did not share my shade of beautiful. I'm going to keep coming back to the idea of this shade of beautiful, because I think that's a big issue that we're having in society right now, where we're focusing so much on that we're missing the fact that the second teacher, who did not share my shade of beautiful, said, Devon, if you come to school an hour early next year, I will be here and I will help you. I was going to repeat grade 6 because it's the right thing, but she made it very easy for me when she offered that. And I thought, absolutely, I'm going to do that. So next September, I got up early, I went to school early, and there was Miss Hannah. Every day, faithfully, for almost maybe 3 months or so, helping that little boy. And Miss Hannah said words that I remember forever. She said, after about 3 months, Devon, this is so easy for you. School became very easy. By the time I graduated grade 9, Isaac Newton Junior High in the North End, deeply socio-economic neighborhood, I was graduating top student. How do you go from worst to first? Not because you're so brilliant, but because somebody was investing. I went to St. John's High School, and I discovered basketball. I became a very good basketball player. And I wanted to be like my coaches. In grade 10, my biology teacher was my coach. Didn't share my shade of beautiful, but I just admired the man, Brian Birdie, if you know his name, and I wanted to be like him. Then when I got to varsity, Bill Wedlake was my coach. And I saw how much time these men who didn't share my shade of beautiful was dedicating to young men who looked like me, but the model that they were setting for us. And I thought, I'm going to be like them. They didn't look anything like me, but I like what I saw on the inside. So I thought, I must really love biology. So I graduated, and I went to University of Winnipeg to study to be a biologist because I excelled in bio. I must love it. I got to university, and I discovered I had no love of biology. I'm in labs. But during my time at the Bay, regularly had a chance to sit down and speak with police officers who shared shade of beautiful of those two gentlemen there. And I realized they're not scary. And I told them how much I loved the job, and it was an officer who said, Devon, if you like it so much, why don't you consider becoming a police officer? And I thought, because of everything I've seen, the stereotype that we've been fed to this point, if I became an officer, people would see me, the guy with my shade of beautiful in the front, driving the car rather than in the back, like typically what we see on television, and that would actually help to change culture. So I went into policing, not because I wanted to carry a gun or a badge or a uniform. I thought if I became a police officer, I could set an example and actually help change society in and of itself. So I became an officer in 1987, a recruit. Now, It was January of 1987. I was in biochemistry class, and I was so bored, so I said, I'm going to apply to be a police officer. May 19th, 1987, I am a recruit in the Winnipeg Police Department, I think it was called back then, Danny. And I was terrified. Because again, there wasn't a lot of people with my shit are beautiful in the police service at the time. So I sat at the back of the class. I'm going to be just nice and quiet because I do not want to get kicked out of recruit class. That's what I was telling myself. And I graduated that December, started walking the beat. And at that point now, I'm walking the beat on Main Street, and I'm seeing people up close and personal in situations where previously I would just drive by on the bus. And I challenged myself as the guy in uniform. How am I going to police? Could Devon Clunis, the guy in the uniform with the badge and the gun, change the situation that he was finding people in? And I would do the simple things like, sir or ma'am, just treating people with respect and dignity. And you could actually see the countenance that would change on somebody's face when the person in uniform was treating them like that. Back then, like, young girls were just being prostituted on our streets, and I would spend a ton of time with these young girls. And, you know, some people think, you're wasting your time. But I can tell you one of the proudest moments in my career, still a constable, receiving a telephone call from a young girl calling me from Calgary. And she said, I just want you to know that what you said made a difference. I am back home, I'm with my family, and everything is going really well. So I saw my role as a police officer. Yes, we have to enforce the law, but even in just the way that we treat people, the things we say to them can have such a massive difference. So that's the type of police officer I was. So for the first 9 years, I really loved policing, what we call general patrol, going to calls. I loved chasing people, I really did. Every single person I ever chased, I caught because it was like a challenge. But I remember clearly the day we were riding up the elevator in the old public safety building, and I saw this young kid in handcuffs being taken up by some other officers. And then I started seeing that becoming a trend. And I thought, we're not really having the impact that we should be having if this many kids are getting in trouble with the law. And typically I would ask them, like, why'd you do it? Whatever they did that got them in trouble with the law. And the response always was, I don't know. And I thought, how sad is that? Kids are setting their lives on a particular track with no real thought. So I left regular policing and I became a school resource officer. Now, I cannot recall any recruit, you know, if we're doing a background investigation or an interview and say, why do you want to become a police officer? Nobody goes in to become an SRO. Maybe you guys ran into that. I just haven't had anyone who said I want to be an SRO. They want to be homicide or vice or detective, major crimes, all the exciting stuff. But for me, policing was about a purpose. And I thought the only way I'm going to change what I'm seeing with these youth is to leave regular policing, because by the time we're arresting them, it's too late. And I became a school resource officer because I thought that is ultimate prevention. And I spent 5 years as a SRO. I will tell you to this day, even though becoming chief of police, those were the most enjoyable years in my career. I have so many adults who come up to me regularly and say, here's the impact you had on me as an SRO. Last summer, I had a gentleman invited me to his son's graduation from grade 12. I was the father's SRO, and I went to his home somewhere in the South End. He says, I'm living this life now. My family's doing well because of those interactions we had as his SRO. You talk about power and impact and purpose. And so in 2002, I received my first promotion, and the only reason I applied for my first promotion was because our transfer policy said we had 5 years. So that was my 5th year as a school resource officer. Thought, well, if I have to leave the job I love so much, I should at least apply for a promotion. So I applied, and I was so thankful I got promoted. I remember riding home on the bus and thinking, wow, little boy from Jamaica, you grew up with no electricity, no running water. You came to Canada, failed grade 6. You simply want to be a police officer. Now you get a promotion. Wow. Now, typically in the organization, you get a promotion, you start vying for, positions where you want to go. I simply said, put me wherever. I just want to serve. And I got sent to this division It's called Organizational Development and Support. I was familiar with the chief because he worked there for a while too. Strategic planning. Not too many people want to go to organizational development and support. It's not exciting like all these other places. But something transformational happened in my time there because I had an opportunity to work with the executive, the chief, the deputies on a regular basis. And I started to see the impact that the Winnipeg Police Service has on the entire city, beyond just enforcing the law, that we create the culture, that sense of safety. And I thought, wow, well, now I'm going to dream. Maybe one day I could retire as an inspector. An inspector gets to oversee a division, maybe leading 200 plus individuals. And that was my desire. If I got to the rank of an inspector, that would be a great career. So I remember in 2004, I am a sergeant. And Chief, which year did you get promoted to inspector? Was it 2005? 2005. So 2004, I'm a sergeant. He was a sergeant at the time. I've never told you this, I don't think. But I see him get promoted from, and in the rank structure is constable, patrol sergeant, sergeant, staff sergeant. But when you get to the rank of a sergeant, they will allow you to attempt to jump a rank and get to inspector. That year, Chief Smythe jumped a rank and went from sergeant to inspector. And I started dreaming. I've seen somebody do it. He doesn't share my shade of beautiful. I was just looking at the fact that there was another sergeant who did this, so I started dreaming, maybe one day I could do that. 2007, I followed in his footsteps, and I became an inspector, jumping a rank. Not about the color, not about anything. It's just seeing the example and following the example. I became an inspector, and I went to work in a division that nobody else really wanted to work in. Gord Friesen, you worked in that division later, didn't you? They called it Records and Reports Management. And people didn't think it was an exciting place to be. But I went there with this mindset. All I'm going to focus on is the well-being of the people. And it was amazing. The first year we had maybe 15 openings in the division. Only 4 people applied to come because I thought it'd be a quiet place just to go and while away the last, a year or two of the career. But when you focus on taking care of the well-being of your people, the following year people were literally knocking on the door and they said, "We want to come work in your division." Well, why? We hear that you care about the people. And that was where one day I'm sitting down and take out my notebook and I wrote down these words. People first, inside out. Take care of your people, make sure that they're healthy, and then give them all the right tools to do the job. And it was amazing. That division just, everything it touched, it was almost like it was magic. Everything. Simply because we were focusing on the people. And when you take care of your people, they'll take care of all the issues, and it's amazing what happens. 2 years later, I get promoted to what's called a superintendent. I'm one of the 7 highest ranking members in the Winnipeg Police Service. Unheard of. Was never in my mind's eye. And I remember sitting around the boardroom table with the chief and the deputies and inspectors would come in and report what's going on in our city. And one day I asked this question. I said, what are we hearing? Crime or deep social issues? But the mindset in policing generally, not just the Winnipeg Police Service at the time, we as the police, we deal with the crime. And I thought, no, because if that's all we're doing, it's no different than with the kids. We need to get proactive. And I was getting quite frustrated because I thought we weren't having the impact that we're supposed to be having, bigger than law enforcement. And I went down to my office and I typed in the words, crime prevention through social development. What does that mean? Well, if you make sure all the kids in the North End, they have as much as we can, a healthy home environment, but they have access to education, we provide all those needs in the community, that should actually help eradicate what we call crime. So I was getting frustrated. In 2012, I was literally getting ready to retire, but our chief at the time, he beat me to it and he announced his retirement. So again, I met with all our executive and I said, every single one of us who can apply, we should apply because we have a responsibility to our members and to the citizens to serve. So I applied for the position. And at the time, my face and my name was constantly in media. And when I became an inspector, let me backtrack just a little bit. When I became an inspector, I'm now in a division, I said to myself, Devon, how did you get to this place? Is it because you're so brilliant? Definitely not. And it hit me right away, Miss Anna. I need to go back and find this teacher and thank her for my life. So I went to the school board office in uniform, and I told them, I'm trying to find this teacher because I want to thank her for the impact she had on my life. One person can make a significant difference. They told me in error that Miss Anna had passed away. But every time I would share my story, I would speak about this teacher and the impact that she has. Fast forward now to 2012, I'm in a competition to become chief of police, and my face and my name is constantly in the media. And one day I'm at home and I get a call from one of my officers who said, Devon, I don't know if this makes sense, but my neighbor works at the school board office. They remember you coming in looking for this teacher. She hasn't passed away, but she's in the hospital with a terminal illness. So I literally put on my best suit and I went down to the hospital, found Miss Hannah's room, walked in, and there was Miss Hannah, as familiar as ever, definitely ill. And I said, Miss Hannah, do you remember a little boy named Devon Clunis? She looks at me, she smiles, and she says, yes. And she says, I am praying that you become the next chief of police. I'm like, Miss Hannah, thank you, I can even apply for the position. Because if not for what you did all those years ago, I wouldn't be where I am. And I said, you probably did it for hundreds of other kids, but never heard thank you. So I want to thank you for every single one of those kids as well. And yes, Miss Hannah did pass away 3 weeks later, but I did become Winnipeg's 17th chief of police. And I say, the first chief of police who shared my shade of beautiful in the history of our country. Not because there was anything special about Devon Clunis, but because one teacher didn't see color. She saw a little boy who was in need of some help and gave him that help. That's why I'm here speaking with you today. So in 2012, I became chief of police, and you mentioned a culture of safety for all. Yes, we started policing by that methodology, a culture of safety for all. Now, it was not my intent to be chief. I thought Danny honestly should be chief. And so I get promoted, let's say it was 1 p.m. at City Hall. I walked across City Hall, across the street to the public safety building, and I did two things. I promoted Danny, another inspector, immediately up the ranks. Maybe a year or so later, Danny gets promoted up the ranks again. And I always said this, the minute he was ready to take my place, I am gone. And so in 2016, I retired, and that chief served 8+ years. I don't know how he did it, pretty amazing, because I couldn't have lasted that long. So need to know, again, I was following, right? Setting that example, so really appreciate it, Danny. So, we inherited the system. Let's backtrack. This is what we inherited. Think about it. The world in which we were living, designed for division, a lot of despair, issues that build walls. I was able to overcome that not because Devon, Miss Hannah made the connection. My coaches were making that connections. But when you look at the society that we're living in today, it is a lot of despair. So for the future, I say we need to do this. Who's going to construct the hope? When you look at my life, it was always individuals looking and saying that we are going to make a meaningful difference. Miss Hannah did, Bill Wedlake did, Brian Birdie did. When I joined the Winnipeg Police Service, and people often ask me this, did you experience any racism in Winnipeg Police Service? Let me tell you this, every single promotion I ever applied for, I received. I'm not saying that my positive experience, is representative of every single individual who shares my shade of beautiful in policing. But no, I can't tell you that I had any obstacles. There are a lot of people who are building bridges, seeing beyond what you're seeing here in terms of color. This is where we want to go. So what can we do? How are we going to shift the future? I say language matters. Us, we have to sit at the table together. Invite everyone to be a part of the conversation. This evening, we'll be having a community conversation downtown at the Inn of the Forks. And we want to have conversations like these ongoing across our city. I would say continually. It can't be just one-off. So when you're having meetings, whatever it might be, with your colleagues, other students, invite people who don't necessarily share your shade of beautiful to sit at the table and have a meaningful conversation. Be willing to allow room for mistakes. Canada is this incredibly diverse nation. Do you think there's any way we are going to understand every single cultural group? And somebody might look at me and say, Devon, where are you from? And I'm happy to talk about the fact that I'm from Jamaica, but sometimes people say, room, right? Assume good intentions. Because somebody says something and I receive it a certain way, let's not assume that it's immediately meant to harm or give you the sense of not belonging. I think most of us have a really good sense when somebody's actually being what we call racist. Have I experienced people who are being openly racist? Yes. But somebody could ask a question, an honest question, they're not being racist. We have to be able to give people that room. So here's a fact. Let's jump in ahead. I want this to be our Canada, a nation that recognizes and celebrates different shades of beautiful. Could you imagine if that was who we truly were? Like we start with the fact that we're all beautiful. It's not black, it's not white, it's not Asian, it's not this. We're all starting from a place of we're beautiful. No one's above the other. Despite our uniqueness as individuals and communities and cultural groups, we have more in common that unites us. Do you really believe that? And what is different, and we make that bigger than all of the things that unite us. We need to get to that place. Yes, I'm from Jamaica, but you know what? I bleed the same. Color of my skin might be different, but underneath, we have far more in common. So here's what I believe based on my experience, that the vast majority of Canadians want a diverse, equitable, and united Canada and the world. We have to ask ourselves, are we feeding that goal? Should we assess and determine if a change is required? Now in policing, one of the things I really just ground me is we would start, let's say, a particular initiative, we put it in place, and we'll just let it run. No. So we need to go back, 3 months, 6 months, and assess, is it actually having the outcome? Do you guys realize that there was a point in time, we talked about the vice division, the chief did it, I did it, we would go out and we'd arrest people for marijuana possession. Do you realize that? We spent a lot of money, like a lot of money doing enforcement. I'm sure you all realize now that's legal. Because we realized it was not having the intended, effect. There was a period in time in history where cigarettes, doctors would be smoking cigarettes in the interview rooms. Sometimes they might even prescribe it. But we went back and we assessed it and we said, you know what, it's not having the intended outcome. So maybe we need to re-examine how we're doing that. Some of these social policies that we have, we need to go back and say, actually, are we having the intended outcome? Are we actually creating a more unified Canada with the current policies? Or are we actually creating more divisions? Hard questions. So here it is. Many of our systems have been not been historically good for some communities. I think we can say yes to that. The system's in the past. But no one here is responsible for the past. When we talk about EDI and issues like this, there is no reason for anyone here to feel guilty about the past. But here's what I say. You do have a responsibility to learn about the past and determine that that will not happen on our watch. That's a big difference, as opposed to walking in and feeling that you're responsible for it. After my first promotion, I was assigned, I volunteered to deliver anti-racism training is what we called it back then. I'll talk about anti-racism, not a word that I like so much. But yes, anti-racism training. So I remember walking in, maybe 30 of my colleagues. Here comes the black guy to tell you how racist you are? No. So I walked in and I said, I don't even like the name of this course, anti-racism. The minute we say it's anti, I'm saying, you must be. Well, no, but there might be some things you don't understand about me as a Jamaican, and I'm certain there are things I don't understand about your respective cultural groups. So why don't we make this about sitting down and learning about one another, understanding cultural competency? You could literally feel like a sigh of relief in the entire room. But today, I have to say this, I'm going to be really firm with you. No one particular people group has the corner on discrimination. It is a human condition. We need to really address that. No one particular group. So we should never sit in a presentation, and I've heard this. I've been in presentations where highly educated people have said, if you're in Canada and you're white, you're a racist. We need to kill that type of dialogue because it's not true. If we said it about any other group, wow. So we can't have that because that's not creating the Canada that we want for the future. So no, not responsible, but we have a right and a responsibility to learn and move forward. So I say let's do this. I talked about the fact that it's people first. So if we're going to create the future we want, I say we have to change the narrative. How are we going to change the narrative? Well, I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up and say, how does that make you feel? But I can tell you, I don't particularly like that term. It's so in vogue, white privilege. Hold on here. The guy standing in front of you is not white, and I have a ton of privilege right across this entire country, across North America. If we are living in this country, we have privilege. No, I understand what they're trying to say, but I say imagine, and I spend a lot of time in classroom with elementary school kids. Kids just see kids, right? How do you expect them to navigate when we use terms like that? Socioeconomic privilege, yes. When I first arrived, I told you about growing up in the North End, yes. Let's talk about the socioeconomic challenges that we can overcome. But to say just because you're white, you have all this privilege, not necessarily so, because I have a lot of privilege. All my friends who share my shade of beautiful have a lot of privilege. We collectively have privilege. So I think we need to change the narrative in terms of how we use that term. Anti-racism. I believe there's just one race on the planet. There really is. Start with the mindset that, as I said earlier, the ability to discriminate, it is a human condition. So oftentimes when we say anti-racism, what we should be talking about is the social environment that people are in. You can help people overcome that. If you have any particular group congregated in an area which is so deeply culturally and socially challenged, you're going to have these very negative social outcomes. That's why, for me, it was crime prevention through social development. It wasn't about race. It's whoever is in this area who's been disadvantaged, right? We can tackle it that way. So we've spent so much time, just like I talked about the fact that we did with drug enforcement, anti-racism, anti-racism, anti-racism. Why don't we start talking about just building more understanding and culture? Because we will be rubbing against each other in this country for a very long time because we're so diverse and we're becoming more diverse every day. And there is no way I can understand every cultural group. It will be impossible. But I will tell you this, I do not dislike anyone. But because of the lack of my full understanding, something might come across the wrong way, doesn't mean that you're being racist. We need to get away from that. Give ourselves just a little bit more grace. I will share something very personal from a policing perspective. Remember how many different cultures are coming to this country and calling it home on a regular basis. Something goes awry, well, we need to teach the police how to be more culturally competent here. Impossible. They're only human beings. There's no way they can learn how to understand every single cultural group. It is a burden for you to place on any frontline service whatsoever. Here's what I would prefer. I am coming to Canada from Jamaica. It would be important for me to learn what are some of the major cultural norms of the country. Here's what policing means in the Canadian context. you're setting the country up for failure, you're setting individual officers and the entire system up for failure, whether it be the medical system or any other system, when you say the individuals delivering service must learn how to understand all the nuances of every single group. How about we understand how to treat people, people first, respecting human rights, dignity, all the things that we have in common, as opposed to saying any one particular individual should be able to understand the vast array of individuals who are coming to call this beautiful country home. Tough dialogue, I know, but we have to go there. See it to be it. Remember earlier I talked about me seeing Chief Smythe jump the rank? I appreciate what we mean by this. I really do. I loved it. Every time I would walk into a classroom and the kids would see the black police officer in uniform, I appreciate the power in that. But imagine this, black people who share my shade of beautiful make up only 5% of the Canadian population. So if I would say to my child, the only example that you should follow is when you see someone who looks like you, where would they be? If Devon Clunis, I had never seen a black chief of police. Oh, could I be one? I'd never seen a black sergeant jump rank and become an inspector, but I saw one, and I simply wanted to be like. We need to stop telling people that if they can't see it, they can't be it. Nada. Not very empowering. I would much rather say, look at someone who's done whatever it might be, and you can be it, as opposed to you need to see a black person who looks like you before you can do it. I want to be like Miss Anna. She was a female teacher who didn't look like me. I want to be like my coaches. We are limiting the potential of this country, individuals and the country, when we're telling people the only way you can dream of being it is to see it. No. You can be anything you see. Doesn't matter who is representing it in this country. It's a far more empowering message. So now you have everyone as an example as opposed to just the people who look like you. I'd much rather be in an environment like that. And is it just me saying this? No. Dr. Martin Luther King said this is what he desires. A day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So if anybody was thought like, you're being so radical, Devon. No, but we're on this politically correct train. Nobody's willing to pull the brakes and say, hold on here. I understand. It is about us. It's not about any one particular group, but where we see disparity, let us together address it. And why am I saying this? Like, we're retired. I really could just spend the rest of my days somewhere tropical, but I care too much about the next generation. It really is about them. When you go to a school, particularly elementary, the kids do not see what we're talking about. As they get older, we download this onto them, and we're creating this very divided and divisive future. Just because you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, please don't think we're on this beautiful track. We're not. Because I can tell you, right across the country I speak, people are feeling this, but they're afraid to say anything because the minute they articulate any of this, particularly if they share a lighter shade of beautiful, they're labeled, they're canceled. People are afraid. But I will tell you, as I speak across this lovely nation of ours, the first people to stand up and say, we agree with you, Devon, Black, Indigenous, and a lot of immigrants. We need to be able to start having healthy conversations about the path that we're on, but the future that we desire. We cannot just go with what's politically correct, the old narrative, because we are afraid. So I am saying it first, so if anybody says, like, why are you saying that? And I tell people this clearly, oh, tell them that Devon did. That's okay, but it's not just me, because I can tell you, 20,000+ people, the vast majority are feeling this way. So what can you do? Well, I say this, let's not make it complicated. I did not go into policing for policing's sake. Your lawyers here, I hope it's not just for the lawyer's sake. Think about it. It's to serve a bigger purpose. So identify what your purpose is. Like, whatever your occupation is, I think it's just an opportunity for you to fulfill your purpose. Yes, I retired, but I went into consulting, then I went to Ontario for a while. It was all about my purpose. I'm here because for me, it's about a purpose. It's not about a job. Just find a way to fulfill that. Don't let negativity wear you down. Right now, like I said, the world is incredibly negative. But in spite of the fact that I've been in policing all these years, I still think there's far more positives. It's just unfortunate that the negativity gets so much of the spotlight. And don't be swayed by the popular narrative. Just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's necessarily right. I've never just gone along with, and I don't fight things just because, I want to be the stick in the mud. But if you see a better way, pursue a better way. And so be courageous then in leading constructive dialogue. And so just do this one thing. This thing is so jerky. Have one conversation today. One conversation, courageous conversation. Thank you, Laura. That is what I have for you.